Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Good. Okay, so in a continued effort to provide value for you guys, um, with the training aspect of it, I look at Thursdays as like tactical skills, whether that's role play, scripts, objection handling techniques, or just knowledge and information, right? And by no means do I know it all. Certainly still have a lot to learn, but I do have a lot of experiences with different aspects of real estate, and I like sharing that with you guys. And like always, and this goes with everything, mortgages, title. I just want you to know enough to be dangerous. I don't want you to be an expert because your job is to sell houses, right? To provide enough value to your clients, but to also know where to go and who to go to when you need additional help, support, and guidance on things. So um, take it for what it's worth. I want you, again, know enough to be dangerous. But at the end of the day, keep in mind, we are not attorneys. We are not mortgage professionals. We are not title reps. Um, so if you ever have any questions that you aren't 100% sure in, just tell your clients, it's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I will find out for you. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time. The important thing is going out, finding that answer, and then being able to relay it to them in um, quickly time. So regarding homeowners associations, HOAs, bylaws, this is not going to be a fun one, guys. It's going to be kind of boring, but it's super important for you guys to understand. So I'm going to be kind of just surface level on a few things, and then other things we'll go into, I think, the most important things for you guys to know. Okay. So you're not going to be an expert on HOA or anything like that after this, but you will know what to look for. Um, a lot of agents have been giving us ideas and feedback and questions for classes and training and stuff, and that's where this came from. Megan had recently had some questions about homeowners association and bylaws and things, and she's like, it'd be a good opportunity for a class. I said, perfect, I need something for Thursday. So I want you to all continue to do that. All right, so if you have something to come up, shoot us a note, put it on the board in the office. We love being able to provide value for the things that you guys find relevant right now. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I just put together kind of something, talking points, to make sure that I don't get completely off topic. Can everyone see my screen? This is going to be interactive, guys. Please don't let me talk to myself for
Yep,
too
I
long.
can see it.
Okay.
You're all good.
Hey,
Thanks,
Matt,
John.
is this
Yep.
in the
No,
coaching
it's
drive?
it's nowhere, but I will put it there.
Okay.
I just typed it up. Okay. So first of all, what is a homeowners association? What anybody feel free to define what their understanding of one is, or how you would articulate to a client what one is?
It's a group of people who vote on and come up with rules for a neighborhood or a condo building.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. The questions are why and how does it go about getting formed? So the definition of a homeowners association is an organization that makes and enforces rules for condominiums, townhouses, and planned communities. Most of you on this call probably associate a homeowners association with condos or townhouses, those kinds of things. But I want you to be aware. Does anyone live in a single family neighborhood that has an association? I know I do.
No, but the neighborhood that's one street over from mine is like that.
Okay.
I did.
Anyone
So I
else?
live. I,
I have a lake association.
Okay. John, I'm sorry, did you get cut off?
I was just going to say that I moved from a subdivision with an HOA
Uh-huh.
into a condominium with an HOA, and two completely different animals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the important part that I want people to understand is that even if you're out there showing your buyers single family homes, there likely is a homeowners association involved, and there's nuances to that. Okay. So an association is a group, right? It's formed by a developer. So typically when a real estate developer goes in and starts moving dirt and forming a neighborhood, They're forming the association at the beginning of the community. Okay. And they typically control the homeowners association until a certain amount of homes are sold and the HOA is transferred to the homeowners, whether that's 50%, 60%, 70% of them sold. The control will be handed over to the homeowners at some point. Okay. Why, or let me ask you this: when, or can you elect to be a member of one or not?
Yeah, as long as you live in the neighborhood.
Yeah. So if you buy a home, a property, you automatically become a member of that association. Okay. So you don't have say in that. I'm just going to adjust my computer here. What I mean by that is you can't buy a home when there's a homeowners association, but say, I don't want to be a member in it. It comes along with it. You have no say. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Furthermore, you cannot remain a member if you sell the property. Okay. So you automatically become a member when you buy a home, and when you own a home there, and you automatically are selling, you're getting rid of your membership when you sell the property. Okay. And I just put in here because it varies. Homeowners association dues, and we'll talk about that a little bit. They can be paid monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, yearly. They are every HOA is a little different. Okay. I know for mine, I live in a single family community. We have an association and our dues are semi-annually. So I pay the January 1st and July 1st of each year. Okay. So the total dollar amount is split up into two amounts that equal the total. So when you look at the MLS and you see a ticket, an MLS ticket, you're going to see a dollar amount. Be sure you look, is it yearly? Is it monthly? You know, there's some single family communities at Island Lake and Novi, you know, those homeowners, those single family homes pay over $200 per month for a single family home. So you really want to make sure, and also, and I'll get this a little bit later, don't just take that with a grain of salt for gospel. Verify that dollar amount because the listing agent may be wrong. Okay. So if a homeowners association is in place for a condo, how do you define a condo? Okay, a condominium. Well, a condominium is a form of property development ownership whereby an owner owns his or her unit and an undivided interest in the remaining project.
Sitting here waiting, they just now let me in.
Can you mute yourself, Mike? All right. So what does that mean? So there's interest, there's an ownership, and then there's interest in the remaining part. Okay. But there's a lot of variation in defining what it is that you own. Okay. Like for instance, it can be the airspace inside four walls of a building, like a true attached condominium, right? I've sold many condominiums. When I worked for a builder, the ownership was technically the drywall in. So the buyer owned the drywall in, meaning that the electrical in the walls, the plumbing in the walls was not their ownership or responsibility, but the cabinets were, the flooring was, the carpet was, the appliances were. Does that make sense? Okay. And we'll talk about where to find this information out because no two are the same. It could also be a common area like a boat well.
I'm gonna go in the chat and ask Alicia for her phone number.
It's Fatten, can you mute yourself, please? It could also be, the lot, right? So in a site condominium, like what I live in, I own my lot and I own the house that's on it. But then there's also common area that is owned by the homeowners association, the sidewalks, the few little park areas, the roads, the entrance, right? So it's important to differentiate what it is because If you just assume certain things, your buyers specifically may be disappointed or upset. Okay. So a site condominium is where a detached single family home that each owner owns the lot and the house built on it is considered an improvement. Okay. Now, the remaining space. So when we talk about remaining space, whether it's a condo or a site condo, there's two differentiations: general common elements and limited common elements. Okay. Limited common elements are features that are limited to the particular use of owners. It's like a balcony, a deck, or a garage, right? So if you live in a condo and you have a deck, your neighbor can't just use the deck saying, "Oh yeah, this is common." No, it's limited common, meaning it's limited for that owner. All right. And there's also general elements. General elements would be sidewalks, roads, swimming pool, playground if it had it. Does that make sense, guys? All of which are owned by the homeowners association, though. Okay, and that's important to know. With site condos, again, the owners maintain their own home and the land, although there is a caveat to this. There's some variations to this. I sold homes in, does anyone know what Del Webb? Del Webb is Pulte's brand that they own. It's a communities for 55 and older people. So one buyer has to be 55 years or older, and no children, no one under the age of 18 can live in the community. They had, in our community, we had single family homes, site condos. We also had attached condominiums as well. With the single family homes, they were site condos. So the buyer owned the land, they owned the house on it, and they were responsible for maintaining it, but they still paid a monthly association dues, which maintained the lawn and the snow removal. Okay. So in other words, the association didn't paint or take care of windows or insure anything on the outside of the single family homes, but they still mowed the lawn and refreshed the mulch and replaced dead trees. Okay. And then shoveled the snow right up to the front walkway. Whereas in my neighborhood where I live in a site condo, right, I'm responsible for all of that on my own lot. However, the homeowners association shovels the snow in the main roads and the common areas. Make sense? That's super boring, I know, guys. No one fall asleep on me, please. So when people say, I don't know who's found this out. Has anybody had a buyer who's like, wait, this is a condo, and they were looking at a house, a single family home? It freaked them out a little bit. They needed a little bit talking to. Anyone?
Yes.
Okay. So it's important just to, first of all, understand, maybe you could even include this, some sort of verbiage in your buyer consultation. Most neighborhoods that have been developed in the past 25 years have an association and are site condos. Okay. Homes in Livonia, homes in Royal Oak, homes that aren't in traditional neighborhoods that were developed by the same builder aren't not, but they still might have some sort of covenants or restrictions based on the city or township, but they don't have association dues or homeowners association rules and bylaws. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what are the documents? Does anyone know what all the documents are that you would review or you should review if your buyer's interested in a condo, or if you have a listing that's a site condo or a condominium?
The HOA bylaws.
Yep. There's the master deed and bylaws, as well as what we call the CC&Rs. Okay. So starting with the CC&Rs, CC&R stands for covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Okay. So the CC&Rs are a legal document. So they are actually recorded with the county. So you can't just change the CC&Rs without recording them. Okay. The CC&Rs are really the rules of the neighborhood. It governs what you can, can't, and must do. Can anybody think of things that you can, can't, and must do that might be in the CC&Rs?
you can't park certain things within the, in your driveway, like a camper or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a big one. And especially if you know your buyers have a boat or a camper, there might be limitations where they might say that can't be parked in your driveway for more than 24 hours or 48 hours, right? For cleaning, loading, unloading, right? But you can't just back your boat up and park it in your driveway all summer, right? That's important to know, right? It'd be a real disappointment if your buyer can't fit that boat in the garage and they want to park it in the driveway, and all of a sudden they find out that they bought a house in a neighborhood that says you cannot do that, right? So that's something that you can't do. Something that you can do. What about building a shed? In my neighborhood, this was a hot topic early on. Some people wanted to build sheds, and our CCNR said no outbuildings of any kind. And it specified dog runs, sheds, outbuildings. So, that was something that a few people were upset about. It was brought upon the association. The association voted, and we voted to keep that rule in place because we do have a say in what the association does. John?
And yeah, I want to piggyback on what you just said there. There are you'll go into certain neighborhoods that have HOAs, and you'll see that something's excluded. Like, for example, the fence can only be within a certain percentage of the backyard, and yet you'll see a neighbor that has their whole backyard fenced in. That's because they got it approved. That may be because they got it approved when it was under the control of the builder. Now that it's under the control of an association board, that's no longer allowed. So you really have to be careful when you're dealing with HOAs that your buyers, and I even recommend that you read the bylaws yourself to see what's allowed. In my neighborhood, there's actually 4 different associations under one master umbrella. And one of the rules is you can't park on the street. Well, this neighborhood, the subdivision went up sometime around 2004, and up from 2004 till about 2018, you could park on the street. And then they decided to start enforcing it, and that caused a lot of problems. So yeah, you really have to read. It's very important. My point is, it's very important that your buyers read the rules and know what they're getting into.
Yeah. I oftentimes hear people that have heard about poor experiences think HOAs or bylaws and such are restricted and tell you what you can and can't do with your property. And some people may feel that way. I believe, and I think the intention of many of them is to keep the community looking consistent and looking nice. Now, everyone hears about these HOA Nazis, these people that enforce the rules, right, that are sticklers for it. And I know this quick story, my in-laws used to own a condo in Myrtle Beach, and one of the rules was no towels hanging over the balcony. You come back from the pool or the beach and you put the towel over the balcony. Well, that was not allowed, and this guy would come around and actually give fines for this. So, some things are enforced, some things are a big deal, some things are not, but you always want to check. If you can keep garbage cans outside, if you can install a clothesline, a satellite dish, a deck or a patio, a fence, right? It might say there's a fence allowed, but only if you have a pool, and it might say the specific type of fence it needs to be. There might be a minimum for actual types of landscaping, especially when you're talking about a newer construction community. They want to see X amount of trees, right? And then your lawn must keep mowed, and it's actually certain length, right? So, these, again, maybe seem very specific, but they have to be. Otherwise, people will do whatever they want, and in theory, the community the condition will deteriorate over time. Now, if the homeowners all move in and they adopt a homeowners association and they all want to rule and vote on things, can these things be changed? For sure. Absolutely can be. It's the homeowners association is owned by, it's a nonprofit, and it's completely run by homeowners. Now, they may employ a management company to collect the dues and pay the bills and that kind of thing, but it's still, it's still democracy of the homeowners that are there. Okay?
Matt, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So like when you were talking about the shed in your neighborhood, and sorry, you might have said this in um, okay, sorry. Um, is there like a board? So like, or was it literally every resident voting on the shed thing
Yeah,
in your
so
neighborhood?
yeah, we're gonna get to it just a second, but yes, we did vote on it, and I'll tell you how.
Okay.
So if you don't abide by the CCNRs, homeowners can impose penalties. You know, typically they're not looking to you know, these are $50 penalty maybe. Oftentimes it starts with a warning. Most of the time people just don't know, right? Um, but you know, they can rack up, and if a homeowner does not pay, and this happened in my neighborhood too. Homeowner had actually not been paying his association dues. He went to go sell his property. The title company verifies that the property's in an association and contacts the association treasurer and says, hey, does this person current on dues? Well, in fact, no, they're not. They owe X amount of dollars. Well, that is a lien on a property that has to be paid at closing. So the association got their money. Now, if someone doesn't have any intention of selling, could they potentially not pay their dues or rack up penalties or fines? Sure, they could. And the association has the right to be able to take that person to court. Associations typically aren't flush with money. So hiring an attorney and going through that is a bit of a pain, but they are entitled to be able to do so. Okay. So just like, you know, I don't know if you can actually get foreclosed on if you don't pay your association dues, because property taxes and lien mortgage holders are first and second position, but it is something that can be a lien against the property. Okay. And then interest and that kind of thing can accrue. The other parts of the documents, we have the CCNRs here, right? It's the bylaws. So the bylaws, so association is a nonprofit corporation. Okay. I know that sounds a little intimidating. It's a nonprofit corporation, and it's a corporation because it's governed by a board of directors who are elected by the members of the HOA. Okay. And the bylaws spell out exactly how the HOA will hold its meetings, how meetings are conducted, the duties of those officers, how many people are on the board, and how voting rights are calculated. Okay, so Megan, this goes to answer your question. My association that only has 45 homes in it states that 3 members of the association are going to be board members, right? So president, vice president, treasurer, right? It states that the term limit, so each position is a 2-year term limit, and they're staggered. So people serve for 2 years, but they don't get off the board at the same time. They have the same voting capacity as all the homeowners, right? So they're not like kings or can make rules without the association's vote. So how it works on mine is someone proposes an amendment, right? And then it's voted on by the homeowners. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so if someone elects not to vote, that's just their choice not to vote.
That's a great question. So in order for votes to be passed, a certain amount of people had to vote. And I believe in mine, you can do an absentee ballot, right? So you didn't actually have to attend the meeting. So, you know, people were kind of going to homeowners and saying, this is what I'm trying to do. Will you support me? You know, so they would contribute. But at the end of the day, it was not a majority vote. Make sense?
Gotcha. Yes.
And then also, in order for ours, our HOA stipulates that we have to have an annual meeting every year, right? So the board typically meets monthly to go over the budget and expenses and things. But in all the home, just like our ALC meetings, all the homeowners are able to attend those should they want to, right? But they don't have to. But once a year is an annual meeting to re-elect new members, that kind of thing. And in order for any meeting that's held that votes on anything, for it to pass a certain amount, you have to meet quorum, which is a certain number of people, right? Certain percentage. So you can't just have one person show up and they vote and suddenly HOA dues are going up. So my HOA really tries to push people to attend if they can when something's on the docket. Make sense, guys? Okay.
Yes.
So the bylaws, CC&Rs, those are two pretty intense things. Usually, you should be able to get them via PDF, right? You want to make sure that you have also all amendments. So when they make any recordings, when they make any new things that they would record a change. So you may see the original that says no fences allowed, but then there was an amendment saying fences are now allowed with this stipulation. So it's almost like, it's like an addendum to our contracts, right? The first contract is still there, but it might be changed through a subsequent addendum or amendment. Okay. So make sure that you get copies of all of those things. For me, if I have a condo or if, I try to get those ahead of time when I'm listing a property, and I'll usually throw them in the attached docs. So, a listing or a buyer's agent rather can just pull those right away. Because they are part of the paperwork and things that I would request while my buyers are doing their due diligence period. I would just instead of hunting them down after the fact, make them part of my listing process to just make sure I have a copy of them. Okay. Conversely, if you're a buyer's agent, right, you're working with a buyer that's interested in purchasing, at the time the purchase agreement is accepted, if you don't already have those documents, make sure you're requesting those and you're giving them to your buyer. Now, this is important. Again, we are not attorneys. We are not, legal representatives. If we are, you should do your due diligence, right? And make sure specifically that you're reviewing these things. But as long as you are requesting those documents and you're giving them to your buyers, you're absolving yourself of most responsibility. Again, because you are, if your buyer says, well, you never gave me them, you're going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place there. If you at least gave them and they didn't read them or didn't understand them, that's a little different, right? So make sure if there's a homeowners association involved, you're getting those documents and you're giving them to your buyer, okay? And then you're asking them, if you have any questions or concerns or need clarifications, they need to be done during your due diligence period while we're having our inspections done. Because if you have an issue 2 weeks after that, after inspection has been satisfied, sorry, Charlie, you don't have any recourse. Okay? Other items to review. So they're going to give you a copy of the HOA, the bylaws. I'm going to ask for the budget, right? Every year, the homeowners association is going to propose and vote on a budget. It's, depending on the HOA, relatively simple. This is the dollar amount of dues per number of homes. This is the total amount that we're going to get. And these are all the proposed expenses. Lawn care, common element maintenance, common element insurance, money to be put in reserves, projects, administrative, mailing, management fees, whatever. They're all listed there, all right? It's quite simple, guys. It's just like a P&L. I don't want to see, a budget that shows, more money going out than going in. I'm going to scratch my head and say, well, how is this feasible? So the last thing that you want to do is help a buyer. And this goes back to a lot of times your buyers. You don't want to get your buyer in a situation where they're buying a home in an association that is poor, that's in debt, that's at risk of increases in dues or special assessments, right? So if the homeowners association, and I'm kind of talking more specifically about attached units, condos, townhouses, because in a single family community, my association dues cover general maintenance, roads, and common element. It's relatively limited, right? My roof goes, I'm responsible for it. If my front yard gets a sinkhole, I'm responsible for it, right? But if an attached condo, you've got, a roof, You've got 20 roofs, right, that are huge. You've got, plumbing, you've got exterior, you've got water lines, you've got municipality, you've got sewer, you've got a pool house, a pool, a clubhouse, a playground. You've got all of these things that everybody contributes money to. If these things go or need improvements, the homeowners are paying for that. And if the homeowners association did not budget money for that, or conserve what they were collecting to allocate towards reserves or savings, reserves are basically savings accounts, those things, when they need to be done, are going to be a big old slap across the face. And someone's got to pay for them. And the people that pay for them are the homeowners, right? You might hear of an association that maybe is 20-year-old condominium complex, and they're replacing one roof at a time, right? Because they're all starting to age and need to be replaced. But they don't have the money to do all of them, so they're doing one a year, a couple a year, right? Those are big ticket things. And sometimes, yeah, go ahead.
This is just a question because I was talking to one of my clients that I had sold a condo to not too long ago, and she is saying that they're requiring her to, everyone, to pay $500 every 3 months for the year for new carports, but they haven't done basically the HOA has not done anything that they're supposed to do. So she's like, I don't know. I didn't know what to tell her. I'm like, maybe you should seek legal help, but is there anything that I could suggest? Because they're now requiring her to pay this for the year, but they haven't fixed the washer, the dryer, things that are included in the HOA.
So that's a great question. I would just, if I were her, I would go to the meetings. I would contact the board of directors. I would try to understand what was voted on, what are the details of this, right? Every meeting that the homeowners association has minutes, right? They have to take minutes. So the whole meeting, it's all public, or at least for the homeowners, you should be able to request a copy of the minutes to understand what was discussed, what was voted on, or what was proposed, what was voted on, and what the plan is, right? So some people, they kind of, in an HOA, they just have their head in the sand and they don't really care. And then something comes up and they're like, oh gosh, and they need to learn more about it. But I would make sure that you stay kind of current of what's going on. Not necessarily attending every meeting, but paying attention, because it will matter. That was decided upon by people and voted on. Right. So there's more, they might be late to the party because they just bought the house. And that goes to my second point. When you're buying a condo in a community, requesting from the homeowners association a copy of the budget, a copy of the reserves, how much do they have allocated? And then also, are there any pending, proposed or approved projects that you're going to be completing, or assessments that are coming up? Right. I had a listing appointment with the condo one time. And they said, hey, we just voted on a special assessment that's going to be levied next year. So, we need to disclose that. We need to disclose that, because if I don't disclose that, you knowingly didn't disclose that. The buyer's going to be pissed off that you didn't disclose that. Now, if they did their due diligence, they would find out, but you are supposed to disclose that. You're going to have to pay, in your case, $500 a quarter next year. I mean, that's a significant amount of money.
Hey, Matt, can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
So the open house I held on this past weekend at a condo, well, that was a question I got asked because there's 3 condos for sale on the same street.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone that came through asked, do you know if there's a special assessment coming up because, the 3 houses being for sale? Of course, I didn't know. But is that with taxes? Is it, so if I own the condo and I get notified of the special assessment, if it were a single family house and I get notified of the sidewalk repair, am I in charge of or responsible for that? Or does it transfer to the new owner?
So that's a great question. If a special assessment's on the docket, they may, and every situation is different, so I can't give you a general. If they levied it, the seller paid it, the seller may not get reimbursed for that after they sell. So typically, if a seller's got a special assessment pending, they want to not pay it before they close. However, if you read our contract, it says that must be paid off prior to close. So it depends on when it was levied, or when the work was completed or will be completed. But it's a bit of a gray area, because technically, I think if it hasn't been completed, it's not like a bill that was due that had a due date that just passed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and when you
So-
say levied, does that mean approved by the board?
Yeah, like put into place, like this is what we're going to do, and this
Okay.
is how much it's going to be, and this is when. And that's why I would find this out. So if I found out, if I help a buyer buy and we're in the due diligence period and I find out that they're going to be leveraging a special assessment, I might say, well, we want to be reimbursed, or we want the seller to pay that. And the seller might say, well, that's going to be done next year and it doesn't benefit me because it's not been done yet and you're going to benefit from it going forward. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Right.
kind of a sticking point there. So, but if it's like, hey, the roofs were just replaced and then, you owe X amount of dollars, right? That seller's going to maybe try to skate out on owing that. But I would make the claim to say, no, you have to pay that before closing. Make sense? That's why it's important to understand what projects there are. Because if a bunch of condo owners find out that they're going to be replacing the pool next year for 20 grand, and that's going to impose a special assessment. It hasn't been assessed and it hasn't been started, but it's going to be done. Your buyer should know about that. That doesn't mean the seller should have to pay it. The buyer should just know what they're getting into. And that's why I say these things, guys, because when I go to show condos, some buyers think, oh, everything's on the outside, doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about that. Well, no, you don't have to do it, but you have to pay for it. And if there's not enough money to pay for it, that's on you. Does that make sense? So if you go and show a condo and the outside of the building is in dire need of repairs, the association either is broke, not doing their job, or not collecting enough money. And that's a real, that's a real red flag, especially if, you're showing, oh yeah, the condo dues are only $100 here. Well, yeah, they can't afford to pay for anything. That $100 isn't realistic, right? Because once your buyer moves in or closes, there is no recourse other than selling it. Okay? They have to pay the association dues. Maintenance and insurance. I didn't put this on here, but these are things that, and I'll share this with you guys. So I'm not gonna, I'm just taking it away so I can see your faces because it's weird talking to a white screen. Insurance. So when you own a property, a single family property, you are buying homeowners insurance that's covering your land, your house, everything in it, right? Condos, townhouses, they're different, all right? Now, typically John, I'm sure you pay in your association dues covers common area insurance, and you pay a separate policy, which is a condominium policy for the inside of your home, right?
Correct.
Okay. A condominium policy is typically less than a traditional homeowner's policy. Okay. What I mean by that, let's say I own my lot and I own my house, my home. I pay probably $900 a year in homeowner's insurance, right? So if a tree falls through my roof, it damages everything, my homeowner's insurance pays for it. I have a deductible, right? If a car drives through my garage, I have a deductible, right? I pay for it all. In a condominium, you as a homeowner are going to pay for whatever it is that your ownership elements cover. Okay, so typically, and I can say typically because it's not always the same, the drywall in, right? And your association dues cover, included in it, our homeowner's insurance that covers the common elements, right? We talked about general and limited. So in other words, let's say, John, your condo's got a deck. Let's say a tree falls and smashes your deck. That might be on John's homeowner insurance policy. It may be on the condominiums. It may be on both. Right? So that's important to understand, not just the maintenance part of who's responsible for things, but what insurance covers. So in other words, like, let's say I have a flood. Let's say I'm in a condo and the unit above me floods, right? Well, whose insurance covers it? Probably both. And what I mean by that is the homeowner's insurance that's in my association dues probably covers the interior of the wall cavity, right? So maybe repairing the leak, new insulation, new electrical. But my insurance policy that I pay for is going to cover my cabinets, my drywall, my carpet. Does that make sense? So you might have a combination of both, but you also find homeowners insurance for a condo is going to be less money than a single family home, generally, because part of the exterior is already covered by the HOA policy. And therein lies the difference between you understanding what it is, because I can give you these general terms, but I don't know every HOA. So that's why it's important to understand what is. Some I've seen the insurance covers the windows. Some it doesn't. Some it says, well, if a lawnmower is mowing the lawn on the outside and shoots a rock at the window's included by the homeowners association policy. However, if something happens from the inside and your dog smashes your window or your kid throws a ball from the inside, that's your responsibility. I mean, you can see how it gets into the weeds with this, but it's important to know. Not just the insurance part of it, but also the maintenance part of it. Because let's say I have a condo, like I'm responsible for the furnace, right? The furnace is on the inside of my home. Am I responsible for the AC though? The AC is on the outside. Well, most condo docs are going to say, yes, you're responsible for the AC, right? You're responsible for the garage door opener, but maybe not the garage door itself. It gets really weird, and that's why it's important to know these things and to be able to read.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
So for the AC, are they, even though I'm responsible for it as the homeowner, are they going to have requirements of what I have to replace it with?
That's a good question. Maybe, but probably not. Appearance wise, they're going to make sure that you can't paint your front door purple, or you can't, typically in condos, you can't add additional landscaping or ornamental things or signs or that kind of stuff. But if it's like replacing the AC or probably no. If it was replacing the windows, they'd probably say it has to look consistent. So you can't suddenly say, I want black trim windows instead of white. And that's what everyone else has. So some things that may specify the appearance wise, something like AC, probably not. It might say boilerplate, level of, operational ability, equal to or increased than, kind of thing, whatever.
Yeah. Or like energy efficient or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be surprised if they did, but then again, who knows with this day and age. So when you say a condo, just make sure that your buyers understand there's not, every little one's going to be different as terms of what's their responsibility is, right? I sold a condo earlier this year in the Heathers, which is in Bloomfield Hills, and their association has a lot of money or reserves, right? But they also have a lot of projects coming up. With that one, the windows in this condo that I was selling needed to be replaced. They're all wood windows, and they needed, per the bylaws, could only be replaced with a certain level of window, right? Which turns out only a few companies make, and they were the homeowner's responsibility. So the homeowner had to get the HOA's response or the HOA's permission, right? They had to then do it, then have them re-inspected by the HOA, right? And these windows were really expensive. So, if I was representing the buyer and the buyer didn't find this stuff out and assume the HOA was responsible for them, they'd be in for a rude awakening when they had to spend $50,000 on windows and door walls. So again, guys, don't assume with a condo everything on the outside is taken care of, okay? Because there's these weird gray areas. Same with the deck or patio. I know with a lot of decks of HOAs, they don't actually stain or restain or power wash decks. It's a homeowner's responsibility. And a homeowner who thinks they're buying in a condo where everything on the outside is taken care of might be surprised by that.
I'll tell you, my parents just bought a condo as an income property, and you're absolutely right. It was their responsibility to, maintain it, keep it stained. However, there were rules as to what color you could stain the deck. So they even said, go to the Benjamin Moore store on the corner of Maple and whatever. Tell them you're with this association. The flooring and the rails can be this color and the spindles can be that color. I mean, it gets very specific.
Yeah.
But you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Questions.
I have two.
Guys? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So can the HOA increase an uncapped amount?
In theory, yes. Now, keep in mind, let me expand on that for a quick second. Let me keep in mind, the homeowners association dues, the amount of money that they collect from each home, has to cover the cost of the bills, right? Right, plus reserves. I think mine contributes at least 10% towards reserves. So if it's $400, they can collect $440, so they can put money in reserves. Now, those increases will happen over time as things increase of snow removal costs, increase of lawn care, the increase of maintenance. They will overturn. I've never seen HOA dues go down. How much they go up is really determiner of the homeowners association, the members, right? So, understand that the members have a say in a vote. Now, if you're one guy and you want them to be abolished, and everyone else wants a nice community, you're probably not going to happen. But my point is, it's not just like a select few people can just say they're raised without any context. Make sense?
Yes. My other question is, can you ever be like grandfathered in? So if I bought by this date, it's X amount dollars, but now basically taxes increasing, I guess, right? But when it changes ownership, they come in at a new HOA rate.
Yeah, I've never seen that in the documentation, like a cap or whatnot. I just don't think it's possible because no one can foresee the future. What I did see recently is, so there was a condo complex and they're 4 and 6 plexes, okay? And the end units were ranches, they were smaller, and the middle ones were 2-story. There was actually a different HOA dollar amount per month for the middle ones, the ones that were 2-story, because they had more exterior space, they said, right? So when we were looking at a complex, it was like, why is that one HOA this month and then this unit is this per month? They're the same association. It didn't make any sense until we dug in a little bit and understood that. John, you were shaking your head. Do you have that something similar at your complex?
Not in my complex that I'm aware of, because although I could probably look into that. But I did just sell a condo down in Belleville or Van Buren Township where they were in one complex, but like mine, there were 3 different separate HOAs, and they each had different monthly amounts and slightly different rules between them, even though a buyer looking at the complex would say, oh, this is the same as the other one, and that's not the case. So it's really imperative that as a buyer's agent, you do your due diligence when showing condos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jordan just commented sometimes he's seen it in square footages. Yeah. So sometimes it's square footage. Sometimes, and usually, when I checked, it actually had a list of all the units, and it actually said a percentage of each. So let's say instead of 100 units, each of them had 1% contribution. It varied. So the bigger units had 1.1%, the smaller ones had 0.9% or something like that. So that's how they divvied it up. So they said the total dollar amount of the budget, X percentage of each unit. They varied. So you had 3 different size units that all paid different amounts in HOA. But I've never seen, Megan, go back to your question, a dollar amount that's like or a person that's grandfathered in.
Okay.
Other questions? Come on, nothing else?
So Matt, yesterday I did a class with Brent, and he mentioned it was like a Jeopardy thing, so we didn't really delve into what, some of the stuff. But he mentioned that there's different types of loans for condos. What do you think we need to be aware of if we're going in, to advise our buyers, so that they know what to expect?
Yeah, good question. So a few things on that. And this, so a lot of the 2008, 2009 real estate crash involved condos. A lot of it around the country is speculative buying for condos by investors. So one thing that we saw out of that was a limit. So as these associations would say, only a certain amount of condos can be owned by non-owner occupied. Basically, investors can only own 10%, 20% of the units in a complex, right? So you will see a limit on that. So that's a great question to be able to ask. Is there, especially if your buyer's an investor, right? If your buyer's an investor buying a condo to rent out, say, is there a limit on? The last thing you want to do is go under contract and find out the HOA does not allow you to rent it out, right? A lot of HOAs also say you can't do short-term rentals, so they limit you from being able to do like Airbnbs.
Another thing I just added into the, sorry to interrupt, I just added to the chat. You guys should copy, like save this link somewhere. You can always Google it, but not all condominium associations will allow FHA loans.
Yes.
It has to be certified. Actually, many, the majority won't let you go in.
Yeah, so in terms of loan products, you typically conventional isn't a problem, right? For most condos, it's the MISHDA, the FHA, sometimes VA, that it's not approved, like the actual FHA has not approved a complex, right? And it's about risk. So there's too many defaults in a community or complex. It's not built up enough. There's certain things that are going to be able to say, you cannot get this type of loan for this community. But again, typically it's FHA and VA and MISHDA.
So here's this screen I just shared. This is the link that I just put into the chat for everybody.
Search. I used to live in Liberty Park in Novi. So
can we do it by state or just Liberty? Let me see.
Yeah, I'll just see if Liberty Park comes up.
All right. Michigan.
Puppies howling.
You can hear? Yeah.
Hit send and just see what comes up.
Must be Liberty Park condo something, right? It's probably, now where is it? Novi?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay, so yeah, you really got to nail the name right there. It's probably something of Liberty Park, or like real.
Right.
Maple.
Oh, the town of Liberty Park.
Exactly.
So this says, Philadelphia. Well, oh no, Novi. That's weird. That must be, well, it doesn't matter.
Jurisdictional.
So Novi, Michigan. Does it say?
Approved on 4/29/13.
Oh, there you go. So even if you go back here, it should tell you, the top will say, where's the columns?
It shows that it's expired.
FHA concentration, it said expired?
Yes, scroll back down to it. It says it's expired.
Right here. Yep.
So even though it was approved, it's expired. So that would be a question I'd be asking the lender. Hey,
first,
is this something we have to worry about? And perhaps all they have to do is file. The HOA has to file something. Well, the HOA may not want to do that.
Right.
So
this is, if you have clients with FHA and they just want a condo, you need to look at this first. Because you may not want to even show them something that they're going to love and they can't have. Right?
Great point.
And here's another one to throw into the mix for condos. If you're showing a buyer a new condominium development and it's not completely developed out, there's limited choices for loan programs. They'd have to get a non-warrantable loan.
Yeah, I sold condos in Royal Oak, a project that you had to get a non-conforming loan, and there was only a few lenders that would do them, and the minimum was 10%. So even if you normally get qualified for a conventional 5%, you couldn't use that in this complex. You had to do 10% down. So yeah.
Here's the wonderful thing: we are not experts.
Nope.
That's not our expertise, which again is why it's really important to have a good relationship with a lender, even just to ask them questions. If they're not with that client, somebody you can tap into for something like that. That's how you're going to provide value to your clients.
What else? Anything else, guys?
I have a question about leasing.
Sure.
What the actual like term is, and any information about if you're buying it as an investment and wanting to lease it, how that like ratio or whatever it's called.
Again, all depends on what the documents say, right? All
So
goes
is there
back to
like
the
a proper
document.
term for it?
Yeah, it's very clear. Rentals allows them to rental both long-term and short-term rental. So it may say that a rental a lease agreement cannot be done for less than 12 months. It may say a lease, a copy has to be provided to the homeowners association. It may say the homeowners association has to approve it.
That's like, again, I just said my parents just bought a condo. The homeowners association has to actually approve because the condo is owned by an LLC. They have to approve the LLC, have all of its incorporation documents, and then approve that it's actually allowed to lease out to somebody. So
now, do they know if you sign a lease? Maybe not.
Nosy neighbors will tell somebody, trust me.
Or what I had, the tenant contacts because they want a pool key, and they're like, "You don't own the residence." Well, I live here. That was a whole rigmarole. So it's better to ask the questions and to look at the documents ahead of time, right?
Could a HOA ever have any say on the actual tenant?
Not the same kind of things as we have to maintain in terms of discrimination and such. No, but they still can enforce all of the rules. So whether that's pets, if there is age restriction, which many there aren't, types of vehicles, maintenance, that kind of stuff, they can. And as a landlord, you are responsible. So if your tenants get levied a fine, or if your property gets levied a fine because your tenants did something to break the rules, that's on you. Now, your lease better say that you can pass that fee along to the tenants, but that's your responsibility as the owner.
Well, Matt,
Yeah.
to kind of further that point, I've got an investment condo, and the association wants to, it's okay if you rent, but they want the application and the lease submitted before occupation, before it's occupied, and the association gets, 3 days or something like that to review and approve. So they could potentially deny that, but I also kind of really wasn't aware of that when I went into it and, signed and leased, and person moved in, and, they didn't give me too much grief. So,
yeah.
But like you said, you got to read the docs.
Yep. And there's been a lot of cracking down on short-term rentals. This is not just for associations, but local cities. Ann Arbor just ruled to not allow any short-term rentals. So no Ann Arbor property owners can do Airbnb. That's crazy. But again, you have to do your due diligence. What else? Anything else?
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
Sometimes the listing agents aren't as responsive as they should be. How can you find out where an association or where the association is? Where would you find that out?
So on the listing ticket, the listing agent should list a contact person or a contact company, name, email, phone number for the property, for the management company or management entity. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I would, if it's not there, or if you're trying to reach them and it's the wrong number or something like that, I would immediately put it in writing that you're requesting it from them via email, because I want that information during my buyer's due diligence period. If I do not have that, I haven't had time, or they haven't responded or whatever, I'm asking for an extension. I don't want my buyer's due diligence period to expire until we've gotten that information. So,
I mean, would that be listed like with the city or the township or anything like that?
no, what I typically would do if the buy, now this is a lazy listing agent. If I don't see it on that ticket, I'm going to actually look at other properties that have recently sold there and see if they've listed it, right? I'm going to find it somewhere. Make sense? Okay, cool.
Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
What about the little, like, for a better, lack of a better term, half-assed little neighborhood HOAs that come and go? How do you get specifics about that?
So I've got a listing right now in Shelby Township. The HOA was set up like in the 60s. It doesn't, the HOA dues are voluntary, and all it does is maintain like a little entrance that they plant some flowers.
My listing that I just closed on Monday is the same thing. There's 10 houses.
Yeah. There's no
$35 a year.
yeah, it's like, I mean, but you know, it's important to know that, but there's no common elements. The roads are all maintained by the city, right? There is no park, there's no clubhouse, there's nothing. So, you know, for a buyer's risk, it's negligible because they're not buying into something that they have to worry about.
I will say it was a pain in the neck. I had to go walk down the street. I had to knock on the treasurer's door, and I still had to have the little HOA form filled out because there was a $50 deposit, you know, for title. They had to credit a little, pay a little.
Yeah.
But they exist.
Yeah. And I recently sold a house, or represented a buyer. They bought, the street, it's a private street. It's a dirt road. All of the homeowners contribute whatever. They don't use a property management company. I had literally one of the homeowners is the president, collects the money, and the money that they collect is just to grade the road a couple of times a year. That's it. So it's like all on like a good neighbor basis. If that weirds your clients out, your buyers, like I would just steer clear of it. What else? Okay. So guys, I hope I've given you enough. I'll share that document. It'll be in our coaching stuff. It's just enough to be dangerous. If anything I want you to take away with is ask a lot of questions and don't assume anything. Okay. That's the worst thing that you can do, is just assume. If you're reading the documents and it doesn't have the document or the language that you're looking for, or you don't understand it, ask, right? And don't rely on a listing agent if you're representing a buyer. I would be communicating directly with the management company or the HOA. Typically, those people want to make sure that they provide you the proper information because it'll make their job easier after someone who buys in the complex or the community it moves in. Okay, guys, I appreciate you. Hopefully you got some value from today. Again, don't be afraid of submitting questions or ideas for training. If it's something that you're stuck on or curious about or want to learn more about, chances are other agents would benefit from that too. So give us your ideas and let us know if you have any questions.